Opening my $75,000 inheritance check, my sister whispered, "Too bad you'll never see a penny." Her words were soft, meant only for me, but they cut deeper than any knife. Around us, the lawyer's office buzzed with the quiet murmur of family gathered for Grandpa's will reading. The afternoon sun filtered through Venetian blinds, casting prison bar shadows across the mahogany desk. I was 32, the youngest of 3 siblings, always the forgotten one. Sarah, my older sister by 4 years, stood beside me, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood floor as she shifted her weight. Her perfectly manicured hand rested on my shoulder, a gesture that might have looked caring to others, but felt like a predator's grip to me. "You'll sign it over to me, right?" She whispered again, her voice honey-sweet but her eyes cold. "After all, I have the kids to think about. You're single, no family. What would you even do with it?" What would I do with it? I'd spent the last decade being the family's safety net. Every emergency, every crisis, every temporary loan that was never repaid. I was their go-to solution. My accounting job might not have been prestigious enough for their liking, but my steady income had saved them more times than I could count. "Mr. Harrison," the lawyer called, cutting through my thoughts. "If you could sign here, please." He pushed a document across the desk, his pen hovering over the signature line. Sarah's grip tightened on my shoulder. I looked down at the check. $75,000. Grandpa's final gift to me. The only person in the family who ever saw me as more than a convenient resource. He'd been different, understanding my quiet nature, appreciating my responsibility with money. "You're stronger than they know," he told me once, months before he passed. "Don't let them take that from you." "James," Sarah hissed, her fingers digging deeper. "Don't make this difficult." Mom and Dad sat across the room, pretending not to watch, but I could feel their expectations. They'd already received their share, a modest sum split between them. My brother Mark got the lake house, a property worth easily triple what I was getting. And Sarah? She got Grandpa's investment portfolio, worth close to $500,000. But somehow, my $75,000 was the problem. I picked up the pen, feeling its weight in my hand. Sarah's smile widened, that triumphant look I'd seen too many times before. The same look she wore when she borrowed my college fund for her wedding, when she convinced our parents to use my down payment savings to bail out her failing business, when she took and took and took, always with that same smile. "Actually," I said, my voice steady, surprising even myself, "I think I'll keep it." The pen scratched across the paper, but not in a way she expected. I signed a check for deposit into my account, not hers. The sound seemed to echo in the sudden silence. "What?" Sarah's voice cracked. "You can't be serious." "I am." I stood up, shrugging off her hand. "For once, this is mine." The room erupted. Mom gasped. Dad started sputtering about family duty, and Sarah's face turned an interesting shade of red. "You selfish bastard," she screamed, all pretense of sisterly affection gone. "After everything we've done for you." I couldn't help but laugh. "Done for me? You mean done to me?" I pulled out my phone and opened my notes app. Let's see. $45,000 for your wedding, my entire college fund. $30,000 for your failed boutique. $20,000 for your husband's gambling debts. Should I continue? That was different. Mom cut in sharply. She needed help. She has children to think about. And I don't matter. I turned to face her. "I worked 3 jobs to put myself through college after you gave my fund to Sarah. I lived in a dump apartment eating ramen while paying her mortgage. When was the last time anyone asked what I needed?" "Oh please," Sarah scoffed. "Stop being dramatic. You're fine. You've always been fine." "Because I have to be." I grabbed my coat from the back of the chair. "But not anymore." Dad stood, his face dark with anger. "If you walk out that door with that money, don't bother coming home." I paused at the doorway, looking back at them, my family, the people who had taken everything I had and still demanded more. "Home?" I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I haven't had a home with you in years." The door closed behind me with a soft click, but it felt like thunder. My phone started buzzing immediately, texts, calls, voicemails flooding in. I turned it off without looking. The next few days were a blur of accusations and threats. Sarah showed up at my apartment, alternating between tears and rage. "You're destroying this family," she screamed through the door. "My kids need new school supplies. Tommy needs braces. How could you be so selfish? I sat on my couch, listening to her rant, feeling strangely calm. The money was already safely deposited. For the first time in my adult life, I had savings that weren't earmarked for someone else's emergency. Mom tried next, showing up at my office with tears in her eyes. Your sister is struggling, she pleaded. She's always had such a hard time managing money. You know that. She needs your help. No, I replied, not looking up from my computer. She needs to learn to manage her own life. She's your sister. And I'm your son. I finally met her gaze. When was the last time you worried about my struggles? She left without an answer. Mark called next, trying to play peacemaker. Come on, man, he said, his voice tired. Just give her the money. You know she won't stop until she gets it. Not this time, I told him. I'm done being a family ATM. It's just money, he argued. No, it's more than that. It's about respect. About boundaries. About being treated like a person instead of a resource. He was quiet for a moment. They'll never forgive you for this. Maybe that's for the best. The weeks that followed were harder than I expected. Not because I missed them, the peace was actually nice, but because they seemed determined to make my life hell. Sarah started spreading stories among our extended family about how I had stolen her inheritance. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years sent angry messages. Aunts called to lecture me about family duty. Even my grandmother, usually my biggest supporter after Grandpa, expressed her disappointment. But I stood firm. Then Sarah escalated. She showed up at my workplace, causing such a scene that security had to escort her out. She posted long rants on social media about her heartless brother, who was watching her children suffer. She even tried to report me for theft to the police, though they quickly dismissed her claims when they saw the will. Through it all, I remained quiet. I didn't defend myself online. I didn't engage with the flying monkeys she sent my way. I simply lived my life, went to work, and for the first time, focused on what I wanted. I took a coding course, something I'd always wanted to do but never had the money for. I started going to the gym, taking care of myself instead of constantly worrying about everyone else's problems. I even went on a few dates, something that had been impossible before, with all my money tied up in family emergencies. 3 months after the will reading, I received an interesting email. A startup was looking for someone with both accounting and coding skills, exactly the combination I'd been working on. The salary was double what I was making, but there was a catch. It required moving across the country. 5 years ago, I would have dismissed it immediately. The family needed me too much. But now I felt nothing but excitement. The interview process was intense but successful. 2 weeks later, I had an offer letter in my hand and a decision to make. I didn't tell anyone about the job. I quietly gave notice at work, started packing my apartment, and arranged for everything to be moved. The only person I informed was my landlord, giving proper notice and ensuring my deposit would be forwarded to my new address. The night before I was set to leave, Sarah showed up again. This time she wasn't screaming. She looked tired, defeated. Please, he said when I opened the door. I really need your help. The bank is threatening foreclosure. The kids might lose their home. For a moment, I felt the old guilt rising, the ingrained need to fix everything, to be the responsible one. But then I remembered Grandpa's words. You're stronger than they know. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. But you need to figure this out on your own. How? She asked, her voice small. I don't know how. The same way I did. When you took my college fund, I figured it out. When you needed money for your wedding, your business, your house, I figured it out. Now it's your turn. She stared at me for a long moment, then her face hardened. Fine. I hope you're happy being alone. No one will ever love you like family. I smiled, thinking of my new job and the new life waiting across the country. You're right. No one will ever love me quite like this family does. That's why I'm leaving. Leaving? She blinked. What do you mean? Goodbye, Sarah. I closed the door on her shocked face. The next morning, before dawn, I loaded the last of my belongings into my car. The moving truck had already left with the bulk of my things, headed toward my new life. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I caught a glimpse of Sarah's car parked across the street. She must have been waiting to ambush me again. But I was already gone. I turned off my phone and drove east, watching the sun rise in my rearview mirror. With each mile marker that passed, I felt lighter. The inheritance money was safely invested, My new job waited ahead, and for the first time in my adult life, I was truly free. The family would survive without their safety net. They might even learn to stand on their own feet, but I wouldn't be there to see it. I had my own life to live now. 2 years passed in a blur of success and peace. My new job turned into a career, quickly advancing from senior accountant to financial systems director. The startup grew exponentially, and my unique combination of accounting and coding skills proved invaluable. My initial salary doubled, then tripled. I bought a house, a real house, not the cramped apartments I'd always lived in while supporting everyone else. 3 bedrooms, a dedicated office space, and a backyard where I started growing vegetables. Simple pleasures I'd never had time for before. I made friends, real friends who liked me for who I was, not what I could provide. I even started dating someone, Amanda, a software engineer who understood the joy of quiet evenings and shared ambitions. Then, on a normal Tuesday morning, my phone rang. An unknown number from my hometown. "Mr. Harrison," a professional voice asked. "This is Robert Chen from First National Bank. I'm calling regarding your sister, Sarah Harrison." My hand tightened on the phone. "I haven't spoken to my sister in 2 years." "Yes, we're aware of that. However, you're listed as her emergency contact for her mortgage, and we've been unable to reach her. The house is going into foreclosure, and there are complications." I almost laughed. Of course, I was still listed as her emergency contact, probably still on all her forms as a backup plan. "I'm sorry," I said, not feeling sorry at all. "But I can't help you." "Sir, there are minor children involved. My sister has had 2 years to figure this out. Whatever she's done, or hasn't done, it's not my responsibility anymore." I hung up, but the call left me unsettled. Not with guilt, that was an old wound that had finally healed, but with curiosity. A quick Google search of my hometown's news revealed the story I'd missed by staying away. Sarah's husband had been arrested for embezzlement. The fancy car, the expensive vacations, the lifestyle they couldn't possibly afford on his middle management salary, it had all been stolen money. Now he was facing charges, and Sarah was facing the consequences. I closed the browser, trying to shut out the familiar urge to help. Then my phone rang again. This time, a number I recognized. "Mom. Your sister needs you," she said without preamble. "She's about to lose everything." "Hello to you too, Mom. I'm doing great, thanks for asking." "This isn't time for sarcasm, James. Sarah's life is falling apart. The kids are her responsibility," I cut in. "Just like I was my own responsibility when you gave my college fund to her. That was different. You were stronger, more capable." "No," I said firmly. "I wasn't stronger. I was just never given a choice. Sarah needs to learn to stand on her own feet. She's going to end up homeless. Then she'll have to figure something out. Just like I did." Mom's voice turned cold. "I never thought you could be so cruel. Funny, I never thought my own mother could be so blind. Goodbye, Mom." I hung up and blocked her number. Then I went back to work, forcing myself to focus on spreadsheets and code instead of family drama. But the universe wasn't done with me yet. That evening, as I was cooking dinner with Amanda, my doorbell rang. Standing on my porch, looking nothing like the polished, superior sister I remembered, was Sarah. Her designer clothes were replaced with worn jeans and a faded sweater. Her perfectly styled hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her eyes were red and swollen from crying. "How did you find me?" I asked, not opening the screen door. "It wasn't easy," she admitted. "You covered your tracks well." "But I hired a private investigator." I raised an eyebrow. "Still spending money you don't have, I see." She flinched. "I deserve that. I deserve all of it. But James, please, I need help." Amanda appeared behind me, her hand gentle on my back. A silent support. "No," I said quietly. "What you need is to learn what I learned years ago, how to stand on your own." "The bank is taking the house," she whispered. "Tom's in jail. My kids have grandparents with a big house," I finished. "The same grandparents who always chose you over me. Go there." "They won't take us," she said, her voice breaking. They said I need to learn responsibility, that they can't enable me anymore." I almost laughed. Well, look at that. They finally figured it out. Only took them 36 years. "Please," she took a step forward. "I know I was horrible to you. I know I took advantage, but I've changed. I understand now. No, I cut her off. You haven't changed. You're here because you need something. Just like always. That's not true. But her eyes darted past me, taking in what she could see of my house. Calculating. Always calculating. Sarah, I sighed. Do you even know what I do for a living now? Where I worked before this? What my hopes and dreams are? Have you ever asked about my life when you didn't need money? She opened her mouth, then closed it. No answer. That's what I thought. I started to close the door. Wait, she called out. What am I supposed to do? I paused, looking at my sister, really looking at her. Behind the tears and desperation, she was still the same person who had whispered, "Too bad you'll never see a penny in that lawyer's office 2 years ago." You're supposed to do what I did. I said finally. Get a job. Live within your means. Learn to solve your own problems instead of making them everyone else's responsibility. Grow up. I don't know how, she whispered. Yes, you do. You've just never had to try before. I closed the door softly but firmly. Through the window, I watched her stand there for a long moment before finally turning away. She looked small, lost, nothing like a confident sister who had spent years taking everything I had. Are you okay? Amanda asked, wrapping her arms around me. I thought about it. Really thought about it. Yes, I said finally, I really am. Because for the first time, I hadn't felt the pull to fix everything. I hadn't felt guilty for saying no. I had finally truly broken free. That night, as Amanda and I ate dinner in our peaceful home, I realized something important. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to let them face the consequences of their own actions. Sometimes people need to fall before they can learn to stand. I had learned it the hard way. Now it was Sarah's turn. 6 months after Sarah's unexpected visit, I received an email that changed everything, not from my family, but from an investment firm handling Grandpa's old business holdings. The startup I worked for was being acquired, and as a key employee with stock options, I was about to become a millionaire several times over. The irony wasn't lost on me. 2 years ago, Sarah had smirked over a $75,000 inheritance, thinking she'd gotten the better deal with Grandpa's investment portfolio. Now, my decision to break free and focus on my own life had led to wealth she couldn't have imagined. I kept the news to myself, but information has a way of traveling, especially when it involves money and success. The acquisition made headlines in the tech industry, and my name was mentioned in several articles as one of the key executives staying on through the transition. The first contact came from Mark, my brother. A LinkedIn message, casual and friendly, as if we'd just spoken yesterday instead of 2 years ago. Hey little bro, saw the news about your company. Really proud of you. Maybe we could catch up sometime. I left it unread. Then came the emails from Mom, suddenly full of maternal pride and missing her successful son. Dad tried next, his message an awkward attempt at reconciliation that never once mentioned his previous ultimatum about the inheritance. But it was Sarah's letter that really caught my attention. A real letter. Handwritten, delivered to my office address. Dear James, I've been doing a lot of thinking since I saw you last. You were right about everything. I've never been a good sister to you. I took and took, never thinking about what it costs you. Not just money, but your dreams, your chances, your peace of mind. These past months have been hard, really hard. But maybe I needed that. I got a job as a receptionist at a dental office. It's not glamorous, but it's honest work. The kids and I are living in a small apartment now. They share a room, and I sleep on a pull-up couch in the living room. Sometimes I cry at night thinking about how far we've fallen. But then I remember how you lived when you were putting yourself through college after I took your fund. How you never complained, never gave up. You became something amazing while I was busy taking everything from you. I'm not writing to ask for anything. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. And I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. Your sister, if you'll still have me. Sarah. I read the letter 3 times, trying to find the hidden angle, the subtle manipulation. But for once there didn't seem to be one. I showed it to Amanda, who had become my voice of reason in all things family-related. What do you think? I asked her. She read it carefully, then looked at me with those insightful eyes I'd grown to love. I think she might actually be learning. The question is, are you ready to risk finding out? I wasn't sure. The peace I found in my new life was precious. Amanda and I were talking about marriage, about building a future together. Did I want to risk letting my family back into that future? But then I remembered something Grandpa had told me once, during one of our last conversations. Strength isn't just about standing firm, son. Sometimes it's about knowing when to extend a hand. But this time, from a position of power, not weakness. I thought about that as I looked at Sarah's letter again. She wasn't asking for money. She wasn't making excuses. She was just acknowledging the truth. So I did something I never thought I would do. I wrote back, Sarah, thank you for your letter. I appreciate your honesty and the steps you're taking to change your life. You're right, it's not easy. But it is necessary. I'm proud of you for getting a job, for facing reality instead of looking for another escape route. That takes courage. The kind of courage I always knew you had if you just use it. I can't pretend the past didn't happen. You hurt me deeply, and not just with money. But I'm willing to watch and see who you become now that you're standing on your own feet. Keep going. Keep growing. Maybe someday we can build a new kind of relationship, one based on mutual respect instead of dependency. Your brother, James. I sent it before I could change my mind. Then I went back to work, focusing on the acquisition details and my future with Amanda, trying not to think about whether I'd made the right choice. A week later, I received another letter. This one was shorter, but somehow meant more. Dear James, thank you, not for money or help or fixing my problems. Thank you for believing I can fix them myself. No one's ever done that before. I'm going to prove you right. Love, Sarah. That evening, as Amanda and I sat in our backyard watching the sunset, I felt a strange sense of peace. Not the defensive peace I'd built by cutting everyone out, but something deeper, something that felt like growth. You know, Amanda said, reading my thoughts as she often did, sometimes the biggest victory isn't in walking away. Sometimes it's in being strong enough to watch someone else learn to be strong too. I squeezed her hand, thinking about Sarah in her small apartment, working her modest job, finally learning the lessons I'd learned years ago. Maybe this was what real family could be, not a source of constant drain and obligation, but a network of people growing and supporting each other's growth. Only time would tell. But for the first time in years, I was curious to find out. 1 year later, I stood in front of a small cafe in my hometown, Amanda's hand firmly in mine. Through the window, I could see Sarah already waiting at a table, alone as we'd agreed. This was our first face-to-face meeting since that night on my porch. We'd exchanged letters over the past year, each one showing small but significant changes. Sarah had gotten a promotion at work. She'd taken some online business classes at the local community college. Her kids were adjusting to their new, simpler life, learning values she'd never taught them before. Ready? Amanda asked, squeezing my hand. I nodded, pushing open the door. Sarah stood as we approached. She looked different, not just the obvious changes, like the less expensive clothes or the simpler hairstyle, but something in her eyes. The entitled arrogance was gone, replaced by something softer, more genuine. James, she said softly. Then, noticing Amanda, she smiled. You must be the amazing woman I've heard about in James's letters. We sat down, ordered coffee, and for a moment, just looked at each other. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, just new. Like we were all discovering how to exist in this new reality. I got your invitation, Sarah finally said, pulling an envelope from her purse. Inside was the wedding invitation Amanda and I had sent last week. I wasn't sure I understand if it was just a courtesy. It wasn't, I replied. But I understand if you don't want to come. She shook her head quickly. No, I want to. I don't have much to contribute. I can't buy an expensive gift or... Sarah. I cut her off gently. We don't want gifts. If you come, it's because you want to share the day with us. Nothing more. Her eyes welled up, but she blinked back the tears. I'd like that. The kids would too, if they're invited. Of course they are, Amanda said warmly. Family is welcome. Family. The word didn't hurt anymore. Sarah pulled out her wallet, insisting on paying for the coffee despite our protests. Please, he said, let me do the small thing. I've learned it's not the size of the gesture that matters, but the meaning behind it. As we talked, she told us about her life now. How she was saving for her kids' college funds, small amounts, but consistent. How she'd started teaching them about money management, using her own mistakes as lessons. how she finally told our parents to stop trying to rescue her. They didn't take it well, she admitted. They still think I should pursue you for help, try to get back what we had before. They don't understand that I don't want that life anymore. And what do you want? I asked. She thought for a moment. Peace, self-respect. To show my kids that real strength isn't about having everything handed to you, but about building something yourself. She looked at me. You taught me that, by walking away. After coffee, we walked through the nearby park. Sarah showed us pictures of her kids' school achievements, not expensive gifts or fancy vacations, but real accomplishments they'd worked for themselves. They're happier now, she said. Or maybe I'm just noticing their happiness more instead of always focusing on what we don't have. As the afternoon wound down, Sarah hugged us both goodbye. Thank you, she whispered. Not for any money or help, but for giving me the chance to become someone better. Watching her walk away, Amanda leaned into my side. You okay? I smiled, realizing I truly was. Yeah. You know what's funny? 2 years ago, when I walked away with that inheritance, I thought I was just saving myself. But maybe I was saving her too. Sometimes people need to lose everything to find what really matters, Amanda said wisely. That evening, as we drove back to our home, I thought about how life had changed. I had a successful career, a beautiful home, an amazing fiancé, and now, something I never expected, a sister who was finally becoming the person she could have been all along. The old wounds had healed, leaving scars that reminded me not of pain but of growth. My family would never be perfect, but maybe they didn't need to be. Maybe this new version, built on respect and understanding rather than obligation and guilt, was better than perfect. It was real. As Amanda and I planned our wedding, we decided to include a quote on our invitations that seemed to sum up everything I'd learned. Sometimes the greatest act of love is letting people find their own way. Sarah had found hers, and in doing so, she'd helped me finally complete my own journey, not just to success or independence, but to peace. That, more than any amount of money, was the real inheritance.